All right. Hello, everybody. We are going to kick off the Magento Association Town Hall. Thank you for joining us here. And my name is Josh Warren. And as you may have seen in the recent poll, we are now officially known as the Magento Force. So if we'll skip ahead to that next slide, I want to officially welcome everyone on the Magento Force to our Town Hall. We're going to give it just another minute as everyone kind of feeds into the call. Let's go to the next slide, though, and I will let y'all know about a cool feature of what we're doing today, and that is a system called Slido. So with Slido, you can actually go to slido.com, enter the event code, #MATownHall, and you can ask a question. And I've seen we've already got a question or two going there. So if you have questions during the event, please post them there. We're going to save some time for Q&A at the end. You can also kind of upvote questions that you're interested in hearing the answer to. Also, we are recording this, and we will be posting it on the association website for our members within 5 days. So I'm going to give it another few seconds as everyone kind of files in. Thank y'all for joining us this morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world. Kind of looking through the attendee list. It's fun to see people from all over joining. And also, if you do have questions, as I just mentioned, post those to Slido instead of the chat. That way we will be able to take those out of Slido when it comes to Q&A time. With that, again, for anyone who just joined, we are going to record this. We'll post the recording to the Magento Association website, and we're using this slido.com service to ask questions. So if you have any questions for us during the session, please post them there. And if we'll skip to the next slide, I'm going to go ahead and walk us through the agenda. So as I said, my name is Josh Warren. I am going to kind of be covering Magento Association 101, catching y'all up on what we've been doing and some of the history behind the association and the role that the board of directors plays, as well as our committees. Then Slava is going to be going through a 2020 snapshot of what we've accomplished and what we're planning for the next 6 months. Ben is going to cover what we've been hearing from the community. And then just before the Q&A, Ignacio is going to talk through how you can get involved with the association and help. So excited to dive in. If we'll go to the next slide, I will start us off with Magento Association 101. Again, my role, I serve 2 roles basically in the community. I am a CEO of Creativity, a Magento agency, but then also speaking to you today as the president and chairman of the board of the association. We'll skip to the next slide. The history of the association. So the association actually goes back several years, where it all started as an effort that was kicked off by community members as well as Magento leadership several years ago. That led to a series of listening meetings. I know there's one in Chicago, one in Germany, and a series of virtual meetings as well. Those listening meetings helped kind of define what the association would look like. That definition then led to the creation of a community task force. That's who set our bylaws, selected the initial board of directors, and worked through the process of actually legally incorporating the association as a nonprofit. And Adobe, all this kind of started before the Adobe acquisition, but then finished as the Adobe acquisition completed. So then Adobe assisted with the incorporation there. Through that process, kind of defined what the governance of the association looks like, and we'll talk about that in a second. Wrote the bylaws. Again, those are actually written by the community task force. They're also the ones that define the responsibilities and expectations for the board. Got to do all sorts of fun things around clarifying and assigning legal duties, including risk management, lots of attorneys and insurance experts involved in that. And then finally, kind of the exciting part that I know we're all excited to be involved in, we began executing on the strategic plan. And that strategic plan was actually originally written by the community task force, but then as board members, when we joined the board in February 2019, we reviewed that that strategic plan that the task force created, and we amended it some, kind of tweaked it, and started executing it. If we'll go to the next slide, I keep saying we meaning the board of directors, and I've gotten some good questions from the community of, what does it mean to be on the board of the directors of the Magento Association? And basically our role, we have four main areas as directors that we're responsible for. That is a fiduciary responsibility, governance, evangelism, and setting the strategy. Fiduciary responsibility, that's a fun one to explain. Basically, if you look at Wikipedia, it says that just means a person who has a legal or ethical relationship of trust with one or more parties. It generally involves taking care of money or assets for another person. And that's exactly what this means. We have the money that our sponsors have given us, and then we have the trust and the efforts of the Magento ecosystem. And as the board of directors, we're the ones that are responsible for taking care of that and making sure that all of those resources are being put towards their best and highest use. So this actually does involve third-party auditors and audits and lots of fun things like that. But it really comes down to, when we're in these board meetings, we take off all of our other hats as community members, as business owners, or anything like that. And we think about what is the best and highest use of the association's resources that we've been entrusted with. That then kind of ties in with governance. So we are also responsible for things like ensuring the bylaws are being followed, that the overall processes, elections, all those sort of things are happening the way they're supposed to happen. So that's a big part of what we do. Next up, and one of the things I know I'm most excited about, is we set the strategy. So kind of, again, going back to that fiduciary responsibility, we go through, and we'll talk more about this process in a second, but basically we're the ones that have to say, okay, of all the great ideas out there and all the cool things we could do, what is the best and highest use of the association's assets and of our time, and what does that look like on a strategic level? Finally, we also are the evangelists for the association. We aren't the only evangelists, but kind of the analogy I like to use is that we're the ones that have to kind of light the fire and get everyone excited about what the association is doing. But then my hope is that many of you, as you become more involved in the association, you're kind of spreading that in your local communities and your local groups and events. So speaking of strategy, on the next slide, we're going to go through how we make strategic decisions. And this is an area that I know that a lot of y'all have been curious about, and I know that I haven't communicated as well as I would like. So I really like having this slide and be able to walk through this. So at a strategic level, the board, the very first thing we do is we get feedback from the community. If you think about how the association started, it started with feedback from the community. It was all about those listening meetings. And so that hasn't stopped. We use everything from individual conversations we have, Slack, surveys, polls, committees, obviously a lot of feedback on Twitter, and then through forums, events, and other ways. So we're out there just listening, seeing, what are you as community members, as members of the association, what are you saying that you need from us? What do you see as a need? We then take all of those ideas, those needs, those requests, and as a board, we're the ones responsible for strategizing and prioritizing them. So we have to decide, is this in the best interest of the whole community? Does it align with our strategic plan? And probably the most challenging one sometimes is it financially viable and fiscally responsible? We've gotten a lot of great ideas, both internally on the board and from the community, that we have to look at and just say, hey, we don't have the financial resources to do that right now. So we're always having to make those hard calls. Finally, the board is the one that will then approve strategic decisions. We do seek guidance on association best practices, but then we make the final decision on priorities based on this feedback. Once those strategic decisions are made and we approve them, generally they're going to be executed by a volunteer, the appropriate committee, or an association employee. Early on, especially kind of when we were pre-funding as an association, we tried to execute all these things ourselves as board members, and we've realized that we have this great community and membership pool that we are relying on more and more, and y'all are helping us get more and more done. Then finally, speaking of financing, here on the next slide, we talk about how the association is financed. There are a lot of different associations out there, and that's something that has been interesting to learn about. I know that SAP has an association that's been around for over 20 years that I've drawn a lot of inspiration from, and many associations do charge for membership and for other things. We have decided that at this time, we're not charging for any of our benefits. We don't charge for membership. We're not charging for Meet Magento events, licensing the name, for our virtual events, or for our content. That's just been something that's an important thing for us as we start the association, is that our members are able to join for free and get these benefits for free. That does create a bit of a challenge because everything we do does cost money. We have to pay for these Zoom accounts and all this stuff. So we have sought funding from partnerships with vendors in the Magento ecosystem. We do have a great group of partners that we've collected. And I will say that I'm really excited because our partners get it. They understand that this isn't just they give us some money and they want a list of email addresses or something like that. They understand that their investment in the Magento Association really only pays off for them if the association's successful. So we've had a lot of good conversations with our partners, and I feel like we're really aligned around, hey, let's do what our members need and what makes the association most successful. And it's kind of a win-win. So with that, I will turn it over to Slava, who gets to talk about some of the things we've been doing this year.
Hello, everyone. I'm Slava Kravchuk, and I'm serving as the board director of the Magento Association. And in my other life, I'm leading a Magento agency called Advix. Also, on this webinar, in the end, we'll have a Q&A section just to remind you all, and please feel free to follow the link in the chat. Go to this great app called Slido and feel free to upload the questions that are already there or ask new questions you might have. And in the end, I'll be going there to kind of MC questions a little bit. But for now, I want to go over 2020 and some of our achievements and plans for the next 6 months. Next slide, please. So as Josh explained, our kind of duty is belongs to 4 different buckets, and I decided to group our kind of achievements also in a couple of areas that we work on, and this is a short snapshot of what we've been up to this year. Of course, the year has been difficult for everybody, and we had to adjust to rapidly changing conditions, but nevertheless, we were able to make some progress on many fronts. And starting from governance, as Josh said, and paid some emphasis on this, Magento Association is a formal entity, a non-profit entity incorporated in the state of Illinois, which imposes some of the things that we have to follow, regulations and laws, and governance is in a big part is including that. So the board was formed and seated last year, but there is an ongoing work that's required to kind of keep this entity alive online and compliant with everything that we need to comply with. Also in that area, I would highlight that we seated our first committees, and in particular, editorial committee and events committee. And I would like to say that we want to continue following this path, which I would be talking about in a little bit more detail in the plans for the next 6 months. And on the other side, on membership and content, a big step for us was launching the Magento Association website. So we now have a fully featured association management system working in the background, which let us kind of process the membership and also publish the content and manage all of those aspects of the membership. And I'm excited that we as a part of this site, we also launched the Content Hub, which is a blog which is kind of contributed to by many members of our community. And since the launch in May, we already have 36 articles published by now. So just in 4 months, we have 36 blog posts from 26 contributors. I think this is great results, and big thanks to editorial committee for helping to move this forward. We also, on membership front, we updated our membership strategy, and I'll talk a little bit more about what's coming for with it on the next section. And also I'd like to highlight the M1 kind of help, a little bit of help that we did there with hosting Magento 1 patches and tools archive on GitHub. And thanks to Brent Peterson for originally kind of helping to collect all of those resources. The next slide, please. On events front, we were able to secure the licensing agreement with Adobe on the Meet Magento brand, so we could now finally license it to event organizers who want to organize Meet Magento events. And on that step, of course, many things changed on that front this year again due to COVID, and events have to pivot online, which drove us updating the event strategy. And also we made the big step of introducing the dedicated events manager person at Magento Association headquarters, who is now able to help be a central kind of point of contact for all the organizers, and also for potential organizers who want to organize a Meet Magento event. Now there is a process in place and person to take care of those requests. One of my favorite achievements for 2020 is also MA Connect conference, and a huge success behind it. So we were able to have over 1,000 people actually attending the online event, which I think is a wildly successful result. And I wish we could have the same with Pre-Imagine, which was planned to be hosted by the association offline this year, just before the Adobe Summit at Magento Imagine, but unfortunately it got canceled. But we have been able to carry over our kind of commitment with the venue for the next year. So hopefully we'll be able to host it again, or rather for the first time, but host it with the community next year. And on the partnership side, that's another exciting area for me, because I was heavily involved with the partnerships and sponsorship committee. We were able to secure and then renew this year our 7 funding partnerships. And I would like to express gratitude to those companies for their belief in Magento Association, for their continued commitment to our community. And I also have an exciting announcement today. Is Google is joining as a partner, our group of partners of the Magento Association. So welcome and greetings to Google as well. And besides that, we have worked hard on creating guidelines and best practices for actually the processes of delivering the content and our commitments to sponsor. As Josh again mentioned at the beginning, currently that's the single and sole kind of way to fund our association. So we are extremely grateful to those partners, and it is really vital to have those relationships. And of course, we have some commitments in front of those partners. So those partners are also expecting us to deliver some value, which also includes access to community and helping with some marketing from our side. So we were able to build the process around that to deliver. And I hope you all as Magento Association members also understand the importance of those relationships and what we do for our partners. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about some near future and what we plan to do within the next 6 months. But 6 months is really just a rough timeline. I would just take it as a guidance, as a guideline for the future. So we plan, as I mentioned, to expand our work with committees. And since the board is up and running now, I think the logical step for us is to allow more and more work to also be shifted to the committees. So not just the board is not just a single driving force between making and executing the decisions for our community, but we believe that we want to involve committees and committee members of our community to help and advance the association. So we'll have a call for participants, and it's actually already online on the Magento Association website. I think Ignacio will be covering this part later on how you can help and get involved. But one of those ways is serving in the committees and helping the association in this way. Also, by the end of the year, we want to update our strategic plan based on the feedback that we hear and heard and will be hearing from the community, including a meeting like this. And based on that, we'll be building out the budget for the next year and thinking on what exactly we want to be doing next year for the community. On the event side, as I mentioned, now we have a dedicated person as MA liaison for all things that concern events. And this person will be introduced to a wider community after this meeting. And as a part of this process, we were also being able to streamline the event application and approval process. So that's in place now. And if you would like to organize a Meet Magento event, you now have a dedicated person to discuss this with, and the person that will drive and bring this to the board and to the relevant committees, and kind of make sure that this process goes smoothly and on time. And one more thing is we liked a lot, as I mentioned, the MA Connect and its success, and we're decided that we want to make this event a regular Magento Association members event. So we don't have an exact date right now when this event will happen, but we want to make it happen. Next slide, please. On the partnership side, of course, we look forward to expanding our partner network. Again, I welcome Google as our newest partner, and a big ask, an open ask to the community, if you have any kind of introductions that you want to make to the Magento Association, if you know organizations that might be interested in partnering with the association, please reach out to me or any other board members, or to the central point of contact in the association, and make those introductions. We'd love to speak to those companies. On the membership and content side, we have implemented, or rather constructed, a new membership strategy. So now we're looking forward to implementing it. And this is a question that we also often get from the community. What are the benefits of being a member? And we get it that right now there are not so many kind of tangible benefits, but we're looking forward to working with our partners to add more, and working with a wider set of companies and vendors in the ecosystem to provide benefits for the members. So be on the lookout for those particular benefits. We also, as an association, want to get behind and support the Magento open source contributions movement. So we want to help facilitate that. We want to help with content. So we are looking to direct some of our attention in that field. Also, as you might know, Magento 1 dev docs are no longer publicly available, and we currently work on making that available under Magento Association's roof. And we're looking forward to hosting the first series of educational webinars by the association and some of our partners. So this is just the snapshot and general direction. By no means it covers everything that we plan to do, but just to give you all an idea of where our heads are. I hope this is helpful. And with that, I'll hand over the presenter role to Ben.
Thanks, Slava. Hey, everyone. This is Ben, your longtime person who talks about Magento way too often. So I had the fortune to draw the straw to field some of the feedback that we've been getting from the community in general. So we solicited questions ahead of time, ahead of this event, but I think also this captures some of the the feedback that we've had over time. Before I begin, I'll point again to Slido just to make sure that you are going there and asking the questions that are important to you. It's good to see. So much activity, and it's good to see so many names here in the attendee list. Many I know, and a few that I don't. So I'll start. I'll go left to right here, and then we will have some time for Q&A at the end. So one of the things that we've heard is, especially recently, was the need for a better balance of sponsored content versus non-sponsored content. So we hear you. Like, I think I'm not alone in receiving copious amounts of commercial email or promotional email. So even from voting rights groups and other groups that I'm a part of in my personal life, finding that right balance of communication that matters compared to communication that is is somehow promotional or towards some commercial aim. It's tough, and it's something you never get right. You never get totally right. So one of the things that we've started doing as the association has come into operational efficiency is working with our partners who invested in the idea of the association from the very beginning. But many of them, are looking to connect with what we hope to represent as the broad Magento ecosystem. Now, one of the ways that we have of providing access to the membership is through some emails. So email blasts that go out to our membership, and then sponsored articles. Now, we always seek to provide more meaningful, impactful content that has sort of no commercial attachment. But in the case of sponsored content, it is important for our sponsors that they be able to connect with you. So one of the things that we do as an association, and we'll go into committee structure in a moment, but we have people who now help work with our sponsors to come up with, to basically take the things that they want to communicate and find a way that those things are meaningful, and to find a way to present that information meaningfully. I'm part of those efforts myself, and the way I look at it is actually not that different from how we look at sponsored content at events. So one of the things that I think Magento has always done really well is when you see someone as a gold or a platinum sponsor, and then they may also have people speaking at one of the official Magento events. We would always make sure that content wasn't just a straight pitch, right? Because and we do that for two reasons. One, it doesn't do any good. It doesn't do any good for the audience to just have a pitch and have no idea, real sense of the value proposition if it's just a sales pitch, because your ears usually shut off once you realize that you're just being sold to. And probably most importantly for the sponsors, we want to help them find the value in their investment. And make no mistake, it costs money to run an association, and we want to keep our sponsors happy. So that's why we take their ideas and occasionally have to push way back. And I think there may be an example of one or two communications that got through that were that I think didn't get routed through our editorial chain of command. But going forward, I would expect that you'll have inboxes when you do receive content, whether it's in the form of an email blast or notification of a webinar, or just being aware that along with several other articles from your fellow ecosystem members, you have a piece that's been authored by one of the sponsors. You can trust that will be valuable. Now, one of the things that we've also done, of course, is make sure that if you really are not interested in receiving any kind of sponsor related email, you can opt out of that list. Now, we're not sharing the list with the sponsors, right? So we send the emails ourselves, right? So the sponsors work with us to create the content, and then we send it out. But I would also say for everyone that distribution list, it matters. The size of that distribution list matters. So if you can find it in your heart, because you're not paying for an association membership, one of the ways that you can easily give back is just make sure that you stay signed up for those emails. Okay, and then I'll go from there. I'll just jump over to the next topic here, more education and networking opportunities. Hey, we hear you. COVID, there's a pandemic going on, in case you were unaware or live in a place like New Zealand, in which case it's really late for you. We are working on that. So as Slava mentioned, we'll have some webinar content coming up. And some of this will be with our partners. We'll also looking to repeat the overwhelming success of the Magento Connect conference. The feedback for that event was overwhelmingly positive, and a big part of that, it had absolutely nothing to do with anything specific other than just giving everyone a place to gather, right? We've been a fairly social, engaged, and especially in-person community. And as much as we can replicate that or just facilitate hanging out, spending time together, I think that's important. That's always been part of the secret sauce for Magento. So stay tuned for that. And if you have ideas, like if whatever that may be, please reach out to us. Oh, and I should also mention that there are some online Meet Magento events coming up. Now we are still in a period of transition where the association is taking over the Meet Magento brand. So what had happened was once the Meet Magento Association, this was the previous association, once they had wound down or were winding down, Magento actually took on the task, and some of my fellow employees at Magento took on the task of looking after and kind of making sure that party would continue. And then of course, COVID has come along and disrupted everything. So we've had to move online. But we've worked out the stewardship agreement of the trademark with Adobe. And over time, you'll see the association being more involved in and actually administering the Meet Magento brand as different organizers come to us and want to put on events. So upcoming, we have the Indonesian event, September 17th, Meet Magento Romania, October 15th, Meet Magento Poland, October 27th, Meet Magento New York just announced October 30th. And those are the ones that I'll confirm right now. So those are the most proximal to where we are today. And it's one of our goals going forward that as these online events happen, because online events become instantly accessible everywhere, we're going to try and emphasize that people have some, really incorporate local content, whether it's local topics or local language or both. But if you have any ideas, or if you're interested in hosting local meetups or anything like that, please just keep us informed. We want to try and facilitate the gathering of Magento minds wherever we can. And moving on to having your voices be heard. This is really important. So we absolutely do receive a lot of feedback from our ecosystem, which is very, very on brand. But we want to continue to hear from you. Now, I've seen even one of the questions in the chat, and how do we incorporate something like partner feedback, right? So some of the official business partners of Magento Commerce under Adobe, some of these agencies out there. We have plans to engage agencies as well, so stay tuned for that. But anyone at any time is more than welcome to reach out. Especially if you join the association, reach out to us, and just let us know what's important to you, what's on your mind. This stuff matters. It does. It comes up in committee. It comes up in the board meetings, and at the end of the day, what the board is doing really should be amplifying the voices that are out there. We absolutely do intend for this to be the community's effort, right? We want this to be the community's voice, and this board serves at the pleasure of the community. So, how is MA involved in the long-term future of Magento? Unclear. I mean, we have strong ideas about it, right? But I mean, can I tell you exactly what things are going to look like in 3 years? I cannot. I have some thoughts on it, and I think that Magento Association becomes a really interesting place when we look at the trajectory of Magento, right, as a software. I think Adobe has plans for how Magento evolves over time, and I think this ecosystem is along for that ride. I mean, it's still clear. I can kind of put on my Adobe hat right now and say that one of the things that comes up constantly inside under the digital experience umbrella is everyone lauds and recognizes and puts on a pedestal the ecosystem that exists around Magento. So, a question that I think we deal with internally at Adobe is, how do we look after that? How do we carry that forward along with with where we want the business to go? And the community still has a voice in that. And I think that was one of the founding ideas behind the association, is that we could try and collect as many voices as we can to help lobby the ecosystem interest. It's one of the things that I'm constantly talking about whenever I'm explaining the Magento world, whether it's to my colleagues or it's to other ecosystems, or to the person next to me at the bar back when going to a bar was a thing. And that's that this ecosystem is interesting in that, to my knowledge, like I've never seen anyone at an event or even online say, "Oh, I'm an enterprise," or "I'm a Magento commerce developer," as though that were somehow better than someone who isn't dealing with the commercial version of Magento, right? We don't stratify based on like merchant size or anything. Like we generally work as a team in this big bucket of e-commerce. And that's something that I think is it's one of the most valuable perspectives that this ecosystem has, and it's something that I want to make sure is always clear, clear inside Adobe and clear everywhere else that Magento is a topic of conversation. So the Magento Association has I think has a duty to constantly verify and check that this is still, that the community still feels that way, still operates that way, and that the interests of the ecosystem are represented to Adobe, and coordinating with Adobe for whatever future awaits all of us. And that brings me to the topic of more transparency. So I think one of the things that I know, I'm probably not the only board member who's heard from people that they would just like to hear more from the association. And I will say that it has been getting an association off the ground was much more challenging than I thought it would be. I think we picked a good partner to get things going. And we really have come into, like what I said earlier, operational proficiency sometime in the last year. And before that, it was And before that, it was, well, just a lot of work behind the scenes. And I think what you can expect going forward are more regular updates from Josh Warren. An article was just posted yesterday or the day before, and just kind of a follow-up to our Connect event and what it meant to us. Now, we held on to that for a little while because there's quite a lot happening here in the U.S. and around the world, and we needed to engage some of these topics ourselves, and then we also wanted to make sure that the voices that needed to be heard could be heard at that time, and we weren't distracting from it. But I think from us, you will continue to see updates from us. And when you're not seeing something, when something's not clear, when something seems like we're just if you're ever wondering whether we're just arbitrarily doing things top down, please call us out on it, because it's never our intent, and it probably just means that we need to just continue to be more and more transparent. I think of the level of transparency that we should have is the level of transparency that exists in well-run open source projects. That's the ethos that I'm going for. Now, with that, I will turn it over to my good friend, Ignacio de Paula, and he is going to talk to you about how you can be involved in this wonderful thing called the Magento Association.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ignacio de Paula, a CEO at the Bismarck and Magento Association Board of Directors. I would like to thank Ben for getting me to this slide. And before we jump into the next slide, I would like to thank you for your commitment. You made it to this slide, so that's huge. And but there are many other options available for collaborating with the Magento Association, in several positions in several places. So if you think you can lend a hand, you can, or you want to, express your opinions or have something to share. So don't hesitate to take part and make your voice be heard. So please, the next slide. And this is a list of committees that have open seats, so you can contribute there. At the link below, you can view the charters of many of these committees and also apply. The commitments for each of these committees vary typically, but they require, not a lot of time, but it's 2-3 hours per month, meetings and follow-ups and so on. And I would like to let you know that the Diversity and Inclusion Committee is in the formational stage. So this committee will help with the development of the charter. So that's really important. So if you think you can again, you have something to share, you want your voice to be heard. These committees are open. We very much look forward to a lot of people, expressing their interest in contributing, because it's the way you can make your little extra to the association. So again, consider it, think it. We would like to listen from you, and for sure, there's a lot of people out there that want to be heard. And again, these options are available. We get seats and places and everything ready for you to contribute. So get involved, and you for sure be heard. So with no further ado, we'll hand to the Q&A section, where you guys have posted some pretty interesting questions that we will love to answer in the next slide. So thank you very much for making to this point, and we look forward to hear from you and see you involved in any of these committees.
Thanks, Ignacio, and this is Slava. I'm back, and we're having 15 minutes for Q&A. Thanks a lot for engaging with Slido and posting your questions there. Please keep doing this, and I'll go over the most popular questions and engage the board members to answer them. But first, I want to cover one myself regarding the partners, the current partners who renewed the relationship with us, and I want to recognize them and thank them once again for their continued commitment to association and believing in us from the very early stage. And those partners are Magento and Adobe, PayPal, Adyen, Akuva, Nexus, WebScale, and NSA. So once again, big thanks to those companies for supporting our community. Next question, the most popular question is if we have someone on the board that is promoting open source. Seems most of the agencies that represent in the board are more with enterprise solution. I would also probably try to answer this myself because of my involvement with open source. I would say that association in general, as well as board members, I think support open source quite well. If the question is considered in terms of the association was supporting meetups and contribution days in particular this year, which happened online and offline in Ukraine, as well as online meetup in which we called Kyiv meetup. So association was supporting that, and on board level, me personally, I'm involved a lot with open source, and as in Netflix capacity, we contribute a lot to the platform. And I know another board member, Kuba Zvolinsky, is a supporter definitely of open source. And I would say that all of us on the board, we share this ethos of open source, because this is what is behind our values, and this is what helped us make this way in the Magento community. Definitely, it's all started for us from open source. But with that said, of course, I think a lot of us, we work with both open source and enterprise solutions. Okay, the next question is MA taking any role in managing the wider industry messaging about Magento 2 versus Magento 1? And I probably address this to Josh Warren.
Yeah, and this is actually, I think, something that even Ben can contribute to as well. But I think Ben would also say this is where our content committee can really shine. I think this is definitely a topic, and we've actually, as a board, we've been kind of chatting as we see the questions coming in, talking about how, wow, so many of these questions are great things for us to take to our content committee and get some content generated around. But I think especially this one, kind of talking about Magento 2. I know that Adobe has a series they're working on with their own efforts around the total cost of ownership of Magento 2 and clearing up some of that competitive FUD that's out there. But I think that this is something that the association also, through our content efforts, can and should address. We're here to make sure that an accurate story about life in the Magento ecosystem is told and represented out there for sure.
Yeah, I can. Sorry, Slav. I'll jump into. I mean, yeah, I think so. There's probably a couple something that might help the audience here. We are there are probably a couple. There are a couple of ways that people want to talk about this, right? So I think there's a business need, right, for, like, let's say agency owners. You want to address the budget and stuff around a Magento 2 build, especially for merchants or for some corner of the marketplace that are kind of used to how things were with Magento 1. You may have concerns about that, and then you may also want to educate about that. So I think these are two separate communications. So as Josh was saying, like, it'd be great to have some content around this. And we have a fantastic content committee. We even have partners on the content committee. This is absolutely something that we can take on and help realize and put out there for everyone's benefit. And then where you may want to have a voice, gather a bunch of voices and say, hey, Adobe, what can we do to address, sort of time to live, or the total cost of ownership. You can ask those questions. And the cool thing is, in that dialogue, because I, sit both on the association and at Adobe, we're aware of some of these things. So we, Adobe may have some updates to share there. It's just a matter of prioritizing what, and making them aware of what you need to hear, and what kind of stuff your customers are asking about. So just two ways of thinking about the kinds of communications that we can facilitate.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, next question is, I think there was actually a couple of questions around the association and governance, which maybe might make sense to group. So one is around the membership count. So how many members the association currently has, and other questions related to governance is if dedicated events manager is a full-time position, and when the board seats are up for re-election. So maybe let's group those three. Josh, would you like to take the governance ones?
Sure. Yeah, right now at this moment, we are at 1,755 members. Definitely want to drive that number even higher. I know there's a lot more people out there using Magento and in the ecosystem. So please, if you know someone that you work with that's not a member yet, please encourage them to sign up. And then the other ones, the dedicated event manager, that is not currently a full-time position. We work with a association management company where we can get basically fractional employees as we need them. So that's kind of a flexible position that if we need to scale it up, we can. But right now it is not a full-time position. And yes, that is a paid position. So the board of directors, we serve as volunteers, but we do have paid employees of the association as well that are managing some of the things for us. And then finally, the board seats, I believe, and Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, we are serving 3-year terms. We were seated in February 2019, mental math hard. February 2022 would be when we are up for re-election or election, I suppose you would say.
Thanks, Josh. And while I think we're on the governance topic, a couple more questions on that. So there is a question about board minutes. If notes from the board meetings can be found somewhere, that's one question. And another is if the financial statements and disclosures can be found somewhere about association's use of funding.
You're picking all the fun questions for me, Slava. Thank you. So we have, right now, that is not information that is shared. It's not something that most associations share publicly. The way this generally works in an association is as either part of the audit process or part of the finance committee process. That information is shared with a group so that there is kind of a third-party oversight of it. Some associations then kind of either have the audit report shared out to their membership, or there's a few different ways that can be done. A lot of this goes back to the fact that while we are trying to operate basically almost like an open source project, as Ben said, we are also a legal incorporated entity. We do have some agreements with our partners and things like that, where we don't want to just go post all of this to the whole world. So we want to share this in a responsible manner that gives our membership insight into what we're doing and is transparent to our members, but also kind of respects those other responsibilities we have. So we will be talking about our first audit soon. So I know we will have more information kind of as we work through that process. And that's even something, I know there's some good questions around MA Connect and potentially having other town halls like this in the future. So as we work through that audit process and governance process, we'll work with y'all, our membership, to find the best way to share this information and provide this
And
transparency.
as a reminder, none of us board members are pulling a salary. It's all volunteer effort.
Thanks,
Hi,
Ben
everyone.
and Josh.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, this is Brian. I can just add kind of one more piece of information to Josh's remarks regarding that topic. So as Josh had mentioned, there will be an audit by a third-party audit company based on an RFP that will go out that will audit the open months of 2019 that the entity was formed, and then 2020. So that'll take place in the spring of 2021. And as part of that, there's a 990 form, which in essence, it's an IRS form. It's called the 990. It's an informational tax form that most tax exempt organizations or associations must file annually as part of the audit process. So that is a public document. So that's something that will be public, and that's something that that we would also make available. The 990 is kind of an overview from the audited financials of the organization in kind of a 990 summary form. But that'll be produced after the audit is done and signed off on, again, which will be approximately the spring of 2021, which will cover full year operating of FY20, as well as the months that the organization was fully formed as a corporation in 19.
Thanks, Brian. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. And again, there are some questions around the communication channels. So one of the questions is that Twitter was quite widely used for the communication of MA, and the question is, for those members that don't check Twitter often, can email newsletter be also used for communications? And adding to that, there are questions about interaction of members. What should be the main channel of interacting of MA members? Should it be Twitter, MA website, Magento forum, Slack, or a different channel? Perhaps Ben or Josh. I'm not sure who's the best person to take this.
So what's the, sorry, I'm not quite following, like what are the best channels for
MA members to interact? Where can MA members get together and chat is one question. And another is, are we planning to use email for announcements more often than Twitter?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, we have a regular newsletter that goes out, and that should highlight, that'll highlight new content, that'll highlight any upcoming events, and we currently have some polls running with some giveaways. Would love your participation. So you should always expect to receive email communication. I guess that's probably the most authoritative and primary. And then we will be also doing some promotion on, you'll see us on LinkedIn and on Twitter, more Twitter probably than LinkedIn.
Okay. And I think there was a question around merchants and what's the plan to engage merchants? And another one maybe related is any plans for a Magento roadmap? I assume this means kind of association influence in that.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, so roadmap again, I think, the only thing that the association could do at this point, and, I'll even pull in Łukasz's question about Adobe dropping the Magento name. I mean, there are no plans to abandon the Magento name anytime soon. But I think it certainly is a strong signal that Adobe has not only allowed Magento Association to be called what it is, but that we also have the right to sublicense a Magento mark, which is the Meet Magento mark. That's a really huge deal. Anyone that has worked in kind of big, like multinational corporate branding, that's a pretty substantial sign of trust, on top of the cash investment that Adobe makes to the association every year. But beyond that, I think it just means that Adobe's going to listen to what the association membership has to say, as long as we're clear and well organized. And I think we do have the chance to speak up that way. Fortunately, though, Adobe being, Adobe kind of still being the stewards of Magento that they are, there's a lot of opportunity for input just via GitHub, right? So if you're in development, if you're in an agency, you can have your say on the architectural repository. You probably know some people at Adobe that you can talk with. If you're on the business side of things, you probably have channel management or something else. If you have a relationship with us, that you can offer your thoughts. And I think even being an Adobe partner is actually a little more open than even the Magento partnerships were pre-Adobe, right? Because there's the community partnership tier in the Adobe Solution Partner Program. So hopefully there are multiple avenues for you to give feedback. And then there are some of the different initiatives like PWA, for example. They have Eric Irway and team do a great job with hosting regular updates and seeking specific input there, and you can see the community influence is huge. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention community engineering, which is a team that I'm part of now, and the ability to influence not only some of the direction, but some of the actual code and functionality that's delivered.
All right, thanks, Ben. And unfortunately, we ran out of time, and there are still some questions, so we'll use them as ideas and kind of prompts for follow-up blog articles, and we'll publish that on Magento Association website, and there will be a follow-up email as well, email communication to you all. And I'd like to thank everybody for making time and coming to the webinar today. And looking forward to seeing you at some of our next events. Like I mentioned, MA Connect will happen in future. At this moment, we don't know whether this will be monthly, yearly, quarterly, or what's the cadence of this event will be. That's in progress, but for now, we surely know it will happen. And as a reminder, I just invite all of you to take part in the surveys on the website running right now. And we have as a reward 10 gift cards ranging from $50 to $250 for participants in those surveys. So please go ahead, take some surveys, let us hear from you. And please remember, this is your association, and everything that we do is based on community's interest, and your voice, your input is incredibly important, because this is what we for sure take into account when making all of our decisions. So thanks again for your attention. Please join us, express your interest in volunteering, and let's stay in touch. Thanks.